The Indiana Pacers raised some eyebrows when they selected Chris Duarte at 13, but the Oregon product is probably ready to play in the NBA from day one. This is Floor and Ceiling. Let's break him down. It's been a meteoric rise for Chris Duarte, going from playing junior college basketball at Northwest Florida State to being the 13th overall pick in the 2021 NBA draft. The Dominican guard had an outstanding senior season at Oregon that arguably merited going in the lottery to the Pacers. At 6'6", 190 pounds, Duarte has solid measurements for a two-guard. However, he is already 24 years old. Does Duarte have more upside to tap into, or is his strong game on both ends of the floor already enough? With Chris Duarte, we have to start from the perimeter. Over the last year or so, Duarte has developed into a knockdown three-point shooter. He made 42% of his threes as a senior and followed that up by shooting 48% from three on 7 attempts per game in the summer league. Duarte has clean, textbook mechanics with a compact stroke and solid follow-through. As you can tell, he is not afraid to let the ball fly either. Duarte was regularly pulling up for tough threes in his first games with the Pacers. For example, he was a threat in transition, not just by potentially getting to the rim, but also with his ability to stop on a dime and rise into his shot. Duarte makes these threes at full speed look easy when they are anything but that. One important aspect of Duarte's offensive game is his budding ability to create his own shot. I feel like Duarte really started showing this off during his senior year at Oregon. As a junior, 77% of Duarte's threes were assisted, and about half of his shots came from three. By next year, about half of Duarte's shots still came from three, but only 64% were assisted. In the summer league, I thought he did a good job expanding on this even more. During his 4 games in Las Vegas, Duarte showed some appealing versatility. He was definitely not limited to spotting up or catching and shooting. His pull-up off the dribble looked clean, and he was making some tough looks, be it using ball screens, getting smothered, or even getting into a little step back. However, this is not to say that shooting off the dribble is not an improvement area for Duarte. Undoubtedly, he has improved, but he is by no means a self-sufficient shooter right now. At 24 years old, you also wonder whether Duarte can still improve enough to really add this element to his game. The main thing that I notice is Duarte's handle. It is pretty basic for a two-guard, and although some people see him as more of a 3-and-D type of wing, I definitely do not agree. Duarte struggles to consistently create separation, which means that he does not always create clean looks. Beyond being basic, his handle is also not that creative. He can look fairly rigid or stiff, almost as if he has memorized these moves that he has to chain together before pulling up. Duarte is not overly quick or dynamic with his ball handling, and then when he gets into his shot, I have no worries about his mechanics in general, but I have to acknowledge that they get a little sloppier and less regular off the dribble. So now that I've mentioned that I see Duarte as a guard long term, it is evidently important for NBA two guards to be able to score at multiple levels. This is something that Duarte is still working on, going back to his last season at Oregon. Duarte's shot diet does not feature too many two-point jumpers, at least relative to his three-pointers and shots at the rim. This is neither a good thing or a bad thing per se, since the NBA is largely moving away from this type of shot. But I think it's important to discuss this because fleshing out this area of his game would give Duarte the higher ceiling that he might currently lack. I've said this in my videos a few times, but when games really slow down, such as in the playoffs, teams need players to be able to live in the mid-range. So do I think that Duarte can get there? Well, I think it depends on how the Pacers develop him. 2 years ago, Duarte made just 30% of his 54 two-point jumpers. But then, last year at Oregon, there was a big improvement. Duarte shot 67 jumpers from 2 and cashed in on a highly efficient 52%. Was this a one-off, or are we just looking at a random hot streak since the sample size is not that big? Well, I suppose time will tell. But Duarte showed off some flashes in the summer league that might indicate that this improvement is in fact real. In particular, the Dominican guard had an impressive game against the Portland Trail Blazers. He was comfortable pulling up off 1 or 2 dribbles, taking tough shots, and getting into his step back. When Duarte is playing like this, he reminds me a little bit of a taller CJ McCollum. I think that sort of player would fit in very nicely alongside Malcolm Brogdon in Indiana. In terms of getting to the rim, Duarte showed himself to be a strong finisher at the basket at the college level. Last year at Oregon, Duarte made 71% of his shots at the rim. That's a really impressive number, and it was on a solid sample size of 90 shots. Duarte is a pretty solid but not amazing athlete, so he often has to rely on being crafty to get to the rack. Duarte can utilize ball screens or attack closeouts effectively given that he is a three-point threat. Against the Knicks, Duarte uses the late screen to free himself, gets the big with the jump stop, and creates the and one. However, I also expected more from Duarte at the basket in the Summer League. He was not necessarily bad since after all we are talking about a 4-game sample size. However, Duarte shot 7 for 15 at the rim. He did not look as in control as he did at Oregon, but until further notice I think we can just chalk this down for now as an adjustment period. When met by length or contact near the basket, Duarte got sped up or out of control on occasion. Finally, let's get into Duarte's passing. This is not exactly something new to his game. During his college years at Oregon, Duarte always showed some glimpses and averaged more assists than turnovers. However, I thought the Pacers really went to him as a ball handler at times in a way that was not always available with Oregon. Duarte averaged 4 assists per game to 3 turnovers, an improvable figure for sure, but also one that shows he has some creativity to his playmaking. Overall, I thought Duarte did a good job playing with his head up and letting the game come to him. He was not making incredible skip passes or wraparounds, but Duarte recognized mismatches, openings, and missed rotations. Watch as Duarte takes advantage of sloppy defense by the New York Knicks here and makes a simple pass for the tray. Do I think that he will handle the ball as much in the regular season? Probably not, right? And that also goes back to his weaknesses in the pick and roll. Don't get me wrong, Duarte has shown flashes. I like all of the passes that we saw moments ago, but it's not like Duarte is instant offense coming out of ball screens. Like I said earlier, his handle is pretty rudimentary, so he can't always beat defenders or get to his spots. Watch against Atlanta here as Duarte is harassed on the ball and just cannot free himself up to create anything. On the defensive end of the floor, I generally appreciate what Chris Duarte brings. I think his defense ended up being a little overrated towards the end of his college career, but Duarte definitely has the makings to be a good defender. The first thing that I like is that he plays with discipline and multiple efforts. Watch here as Duarte follows his man on the ball, stays attached off the ball, and ends up rejecting the pull-up at the buzzer. As I said earlier, Duarte is a good but not elite athlete. Still, he works pretty hard to stay in front of attackers. Duarte was sometimes matched up against Emmanuel Quickley, who by all means has the speed and athletic advantage. Duarte worked hard to combat this by taking up the right angles, playing physical, and just really moving his feet. Another thing to quickly touch on is Duarte's physicality. He is still a fairly slender 190 pounds, and he will definitely need to add to his frame. But on the same note about how Duarte fights hard on this end, he has no problem getting dirty and physical in the post. He might be limited to only guards or wings, so we'll see how useful this is, but still. One thing I definitely expect to translate though are Duarte's active hands and anticipation skills. Duarte averaged a sturdy 2.5 steals per game over his first nights in a Pacers uniform. He has really good recognition and awareness on the defensive end. Duarte is not long at all relative to his height with a 6'7" wingspan, but I think he makes up for that with his level of activity. Attackers need to make sure that they are taking good care of the ball around Duarte. If you're sloppy, then he has the instincts to pounce on any loose passes or sloppy possessions. However, Duarte is not limited to just steals. He has also flashed some rim protection. I say flashed because Duarte was not really known for this at Oregon. He got a shade under a block per game as a senior, but I'm not sure that it was worth writing about. His performance at the Summer League, however, was. Duarte got nearly 2 blocks per game, and most of them came in similar scenarios. In terms of improvement areas, I don't think there is one thing to really pinpoint that I'm super worried about in the long term. The only thing that comes to mind is that Duarte will probably be limited positionally to only defending some guards and smaller wings. I don't think you want him on 4s or on the NBA's premier point guards. But if his defense does develop in that way, then obviously his upside will be boosted. So right off the bat, I think that a lot of the discussion around Chris Duarte, particularly on draft night, sort of revolved around whether or not he was the pick for Indiana at 13. People were saying, oh, This is a guy who's 24 by the end of next season, meaning by the end of the playoffs, he's going to be 25. Picking him at 13, there's probably a higher upside guy there, especially with who was left on the board. And at that time, I agreed with it, honestly, because I share that same line of thought. I think Indiana could have probably picked someone with more potential, maybe someone who was not as ready to contribute right off the bat, but definitely someone who would become more of a franchise cornerstone looking forward, 5, 6, 7 years down the line. But since the Pacers got Duarte, I think there isn't really a point in discussing that any further. It's not like the pick can change. It's not like you can go back in time and have the Pacers select, I don't know, Trey Mann, Jalen Johnson, whoever the case might be. They got Duarte, so how does he fit with Indiana? And I think the answer is honestly really, really well. Now, I think that the first thing to kind of mention and the first thing to highlight here is that Duarte fits nicely with Indiana's timeline. And of course, someone will probably ask, well, what is their timeline? And to be honest, the Pacers are not a championship team. It doesn't seem like they're going to become that in the very near future. But Indiana wants to keep making the playoffs. They want to keep being in that picture. And, that's respectable. Not every team needs to tank. Not every team is looking to become, the next team to draft the #1 prospect. So they got Duarte. This is a guy who you can plug in. He can play from day one. Now, I think towards the end of his time at Oregon, Duarte kind of got overrated a little bit as a two-way guy. Don't get me wrong, he can hold his end on the defensive end of the floor. He can definitely compete. I mentioned that in the video. He gets down in a stance. He works hard to stay in front. He's not really a defensive stopper by any means right now, but you can kind of hope and see that he will get there eventually, or at least to the point where he is not a minus at all on this end of the floor. In fact, I think that should not take too long. Maybe his first rookie year in the NBA will be a bit of an adjustment period, as will also be the case on the offensive end of the floor. But I expect Duarte to get there defensively in time without worries. Now, offensively, I think this is where things become a little bit more interesting. I don't think that Duarte is limited to just being a spot-up or catch-and-shoot guy. He can definitely create his own shot a little bit. And I say that because that is not consistent at all yet. Will he get there in time? I'm not sure, to be honest. I mean, this is a guy in Duarte who went from JUCO to Oregon to the #13th overall pick in the draft in a really short period of time. So at some point, I mean, his improvement, you can only improve so much. He will have a cap to that. Whether he's reached it, I'm not sure. Time will tell. We will see. But it's definitely an interesting sort of layer to drafting a guy who's 24 at 13. As always, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like. Make sure to leave a comment. Tell me what you think of Chris Duarte. Tell me what you think of his fit in Indiana. And of course, if you have any other videos that you would like to see, make sure to leave me a comment with that as well. And if you enjoyed the video, if you enjoyed the channel, if you want to see more content like this, as always, make sure to subscribe. Take care, and I'll see you guys next time.